It is wonderful to be in Dubai. And it's been wonderful for many of you to come up and reintroduce yourself to me. I've had the privilege of working with many of you. I have to do rhythmic breathing for one moment. I didn't know what that was. Would you like to come back on stage and do rhythmic breathing? I don't think so. I'm still trying to figure out what it is and how to act sophisticated. But I am delighted to be here and be back. As I introduce myself in this region, as I've come back, I'm best known as Abu Michael. And so I am proud of my son, and hopefully our son will be here someday instead of me, and he will do a much better job. We love coming here. We love Oman, we love Bahrain, we love Saudi, we love Dubai, we love Abu Dhabi, and have visited all those places, both for personal as well as professional reasons. My wife wishes she could be here with me. Who's passionate about their job? Nobody raised their hands. Who is wondering why we are just lecturing instead of having other services? Somebody raise their hand. Why are you passionate about your job? You what? You love helping people. Wonderful. How's your breathing? My breathing is less good because I have a very large stomach lately. It takes more air. You like to help people. Nice. Let me tell you what I'm passionate about. I like thinking about HR and how HR can move forward and add value. And so what I'm intrigued with today is what you heard with Peter. What's the context for HR? And here's what I'm learning and what I hope to share with you as we get into a little bit of a discussion. The world is changing. Ooh, this is fun. In the last 12 months, what have been the changes in the GCC region? Let's see if we can get 5 major changes in the last 12 months. Could we turn the lights up just a little bit so I can see the folks who are not responding? In the last 12 months, real loud. A new cabinet. Minister of Happiness. My goodness, where did that person come from? Probably Bhutan. So we put in a new Minister of Happiness. There's actually a World Happiness Index that people study and how it's correlated. It's often correlated to people who are heavy. No, that's a lie, but it makes me feel good when I look in the mirror. So we've got a Minister of Happiness. What else is new? What is the changes? The youth. I thought the panel with our youth leaders, you just did a superb job, showing that the next generation will be clearly better than the old generation. You as an old generation person probably don't believe that. What's another trend? By the way, you've missed the obvious one. The volatility of oil. Down to 27, 28, now back into the mid-30s. We hope that that begins to stabilize so that we don't have oil as volatile as your heart rate. We hope it's stable. What's another one? Let's get 2 more. Trends in the region. Social media. Has social media changed the way we see the world? Absolutely. I can list those, and I'll stop with those 4. We see that everywhere in the world. The world around us is going through dramatic change. I thought the chart that Alan showed about the change curve was just amazing. We even see it in America. It changes what we're doing and how we're doing. We see it in politics. We have a person running for president who is crazy. He is just crazy. We would like to send him to any country in the world, and we know what you would do with him. That's a hypothetical. In that world, we've got to redefine organizations. And my job in HR is how to figure out, how do we make individuals better together? How do I create in my organization a great system that makes us strong? And my passion is to figure out how HR begins to create value. What's the value of HR in driving and building successful organizations? And today I'm going to tell 4 or 5 stories and take you through a logic of where and how HR can create more value. You know the first story I'm going to tell? Who all is here from Saudi Aramco? Would you stand up? Everyone here from Saudi Aramco, stand up. Whoa. I didn't realize that. Okay, welcome to the Saudi Aramco HR meeting. No, you got to stay standing, stay standing, stay standing, stay standing. I love Saudi Aramco for a lot of reasons. What's one or two things HR has done to help Saudi Aramco be successful? So those standing, point at somebody who's standing and you're going to make them respond. What's one or two things Saudi Aramco HR has done to help the company be successful? They what?
Create people advantage.
We've created a people advantage. We become an investment in the talent pool so that not only Saudi Aramco, but the Saudi government and the system, because our people go elsewhere, has an advantage and has the right talent for upstream, for downstream. Nice. What's another thing we've done in Saudi Aramco? Oh, could we get a microphone?
Generous benefits programs. It makes it an employer of choice.
We become the employer of choice. So what you're saying is all those sitting are not as good as us standing. That was a joke. That was a horrible joke. I was told that we should rib with you because the Arab folks love to rib. But we want to get good people. And we want those good people to serve those we care about. Anyone else from Saudi Aramco, what's one good thing we've done? Yes, find a microphone and... By the way, a woman in the front row who doesn't work there said they've empowered women. And two men said, huh? The men were thinking about that. The women were feeling it. It was coming from their physiology. Okay, one more comment. I see a microphone.
Giving back to Saudi Arabia, where it gives or provides corporate social responsibilities.
Super. So helping not only the company, but the kingdom. And thank you, and have a seat. Thank you for what you're doing. I believe this is one of the greatest times for HR we've ever seen. And the premise of my beliefs is it's not about what we do, it's the value we create for others. Here's the data. Leadership success criteria. We just published a paper where we looked at 15 criteria or characteristics of a successful CEO. So in a Leadership 360, here's what the CEO looks like, kind of the pulse rate that you just saw. We then compared those 15 characteristics with the head of marketing, the head of IT, the head of finance, and the head of HR. Which function has the profile of the successful CEO? And it's the head of HR. Good HR people today look and behave like their CEOs. In board meetings, 30 to 40% of the time in a board meeting is spent around human resource issues, compensation, succession planning, building the culture to go forward. And all of this is around building the individuals to receive value. Now, my premise today is the opportunity for HR is to create incredible value. How do we do that? And let me describe what I mean by value. How many have heard leadership authenticity is a great thing? I'm going to challenge it. Our person who's running for president is very authentic. He's a complete narcissist. And how long do you have to watch that before you know it? Less than 5 minutes. He's awful, but he's authentic. He's authentically bad. By the way, when I go home, I'm going to get sued. And if he becomes president, I'm going to move here. And I hope you'll take me in. But he's horrible, and he's authentic. Leadership is not about authenticity. It's about creating value for somebody else. And this is where he fails. It's all about me, I, what I did, how I behave, and how I work. The goal of leadership is to build value for somebody else. The goal of HR is to build value for somebody else. Couple quick stories on this chart. I'm coaching a man who's brilliant. IQ higher than mine by far, probably a better pulse rate than I do. And I interview people. And I sit down with them and I say, you are very smart. After the lecture we just heard, I'd say, you understand it. Whatever it is, you're sophisticated. I don't know what it is, but you do. And he nodded his head and he said, I am. And then I said, but you don't listen very well. And he interrupted me. And he said, I listen just fine. And I said, you're not listening to me. And he said, I listen perfectly. I'm a great listener. And I said, what does listening mean? And here's what he said. Listening means I understand what you're telling me. And as soon as I've understood you, I've listened. By the way, that makes some sense, but it's wrong. In the premise of value, listening, and I looked at him and I said, sir, listening is not that you understand. It's that the other person feels understood. And he said, say that again, I don't understand. And I said, that's why I'm coaching you. Listening is not that you understand, it's that they feel understood. By the way, who's been in a relationship more than 10 years? Do you understand that? You go home tonight with your partner, your spouse. Listening is not that you've listened to what they say, it's that they feel understood. So I'm going to give you some hints. Go home, just smile and nod your head like this a lot. And they'll think you're understanding. You can be anywhere you want with your feelings and your emotions and your thoughts, but just smile and nod your head. Value is defined not by what you do, but what somebody gets from what you do. In organizations, value is not defined by what we do, it's what somebody gets. In the marketplace today, organizational value is defined not by what we create, it's by what the customer gets from what we create. At Saudi Aramco, it's not that we have great operations and efficiency, and we do. We serve the kingdom. We serve the customers on the downstream who buy. We serve others because of what we do, and that's the organizational value we create. In HR is not about HR. On the way over, I had a bit of a difficulty flying, so I had some time to write. That's the first sentence of the next book that will be out in about a year and a half. HR is not HR. HR is not about HR. It's about the value we create through the business with others. And that opportunity space is huge. So how do we do that? How do we live up to these contexts and opportunities that Peter Cheese and others have talked about in this great conference? First of all, here's the data for the region from the Change Board. It is great data. What would you say the data tells us? Jim, you're the maestro of this data. You're the architect of this data. What's the message behind this data? And it's in some of your materials. What's the message? What I see in this data is 84% want to be better, 79% are trying to get better. People want us. Say more. Jim, do you want to say any more? Do you feel sophisticated? Do you want to breathe? This data says we in this region have opportunities to create value. And now I'm going to give you the roadmap that I think will help you and help us. And it's fairly simple. There's 3 things that I think we can do to help us deliver the value and fulfill the promise of HR. One is manage our perspective. Perspective is the cognition, it's the image, it's below the behavior, it's what we do that gets us to think differently about who we are. So by yourself, that's not true. With the person sitting next to you, could you answer this question? I'm going to try to involve you a little bit at the end of these 3 days. What's the biggest challenge in my job today? You have 30 seconds. Just with the person next to you, answer that question. What's the biggest challenge in my job today? 30 seconds. Ten seconds. What did you come up with? By the way, I hope the answer was not the name of the person sitting next to you. My biggest challenge today is Abdullah. No, that's not a good answer. So, what's the biggest challenge in my job today? What comes to your mind? Real loud, I didn't hear. You know what? It's hard to hear. We will change the hearing. Okay. I will now be able to hear. What's the biggest challenge in your job today?
The biggest challenge today is the culture.
The culture.
Organization culture.
Changing the culture.
Yes.
Okay. Who's got another one? What's the biggest challenge? Change management. Nice. Responding inside to the external demands. Just hand the mic to somebody. You have power. Engagement. Getting our people to feel not only, and by the way, the theory of engagement is not just a behavioral engagement. I can get people to show up, but that deeper emotional engagement, the passion, the purpose. And the ultimate test of that is, what do they do when you're not there observing them? Do they work more or less or the same? I mean, I think that's the engagement issue. Nice.
Getting my clients to listen.
Getting my clients to listen. Are any clients in the room?
Yes, they are.
Do you want to come on stage and have your heartbeat on the, and we'll put I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put you on stage with a heart monitor, and then we'll walk clients in front of you one at a time, and we'll see where does your heart go faster and where does it go slower. No, we won't do that. Which client do you feel for? This question tells me your mental model, your cognitive image. When I think about my job, what's the challenge I have? There's been 4 phases in the HR world. And we're moving to a 5th. I'll just allude to it quickly. We haven't written that book yet. We wrote the first line. HR is not about HR. The first phase is, the challenge in my job today is administrative efficiency. The challenge in my job today is managing the terms and conditions of work. There's a professional association in the world that just published a paper, and they said the dominant metric of HR is cost per hire per employee. What do you think, Peter? By the way, if you didn't see Peter from CIPD, here's what he just did. That is a British way of saying not good. By the way, that's a horrible measure. And I'm saying that publicly, and I'll say it loudly. That's an administrative measure. You got to do it, but that's not what drives value in a company. The second level is, what's my challenge? Getting good at the function. Staffing, hiring people, retaining people, managing the millennials, building the right HR department. The third level of HR is strategic. Connecting HR to the strategy of my business. In Saudi Aramco, you pick leaders who match what your business needs. You build employer of choice programs that match what your business needs. In other organizations, you have different types of leaders because the skill sets are different. That's strategic HR. And the metaphor is easy. You look in a mirror, and the mirror is strategy. And in the mirror of strategy, you build a set of HR practices. The next level is outside in. And I think that's where we've been the last 2 or 3 years. Don't connect HR to the strategy. Instead of that being a mirror, consider it a window. Look through the window to the outside customer, to the outside community. At Saudi Aramco, we don't want to hire people that meet our strategy. We want to hire people that will help us better serve the kingdom. And through our strategy, we help the kingdom succeed. At MAF, we want to build malls, and that's our strategy, to have revenue per square foot, but we want to build malls that serve the clients who come to those malls. At Saudi Telecommunications, we don't want to just build great phone systems. We want to build great phone systems, that's our strategy, that will connect us with the consumer and ultimately the investor. You saw the data. Employee engagement, who said engagement? Correlates with customer engagement. The early research on that was done in the mid-'80s. We studied in the retail space and in banking space. A 10% increase in employee engagement will lead to a 5% increase in customer engagement over about a 9 to 12 month period. There's a lag. We also found that employee engagement wasn't corporate. In fact, what we found is the biggest predictor of employee engagement was not headquarters engagement, but frontline employees who interacted with the customer. Our takeaway, by the way, was if you have an employee with bad engagement scores and you cannot fire him or her, move them to a corporate position. For the people in the front row, they're not laughing. The people behind you are laughing quite a bit. They're saying, oh, we now understand why this is happening. That's why you're in that role, because we don't trust you with clients. By the way, 10% increase in employee engagement, 5% customer engagement, 2.5% increase in profitability. You cut it in half each time. We found that in banks, we found it in retail, and we find it in almost any consumer-facing business. The value of HR is not the employee engagement, it's the value we get from the store. Let me give an example. There's a big company in the United States, probably one of the biggest retail firms in the world, called Walmart. What did they do a year ago? I'm going to move over here so nobody's going to watch you, they'll watch me. What did they do? So you can move. What did Walmart do a year ago? Walmart is $500 billion. That's a huge revenue stream. It's called a month for Saudi Aramco. No, that was a very good joke, but nobody got it. It's a huge revenue stream. Because they're in retail, they're making about a 2% return on sales. So they're making about $10 billion. A year ago, they decided to put $1 billion into employee morale and improvement. A lot or a little? That's a lot. That's 10% of their profits. And when you put it into employee morale and improvement, salaries, benefits, training, it's not an event. You can't take it back. You can't reduce salary once you've increased it. So how in the world did they do that? You're the head of HR. I want to take 10% of our profit in perpetuity and put it into employee work that increases their engagement. How does HR build the case? Here's what they did. Head of HR said, the average person who comes to Walmart buys, and I'm going to make up a few numbers, $50. So in their basket is $50. We've looked at stores where employee sentiment or engagement, sentiment is a broader term, is higher versus lower. In stores, this thing is scary. In stores where, gotcha. I just got a dirty look from the camera guy. In stores where employee sentiment is higher, the average basket is 55. We think employee sentiment, engagement, productivity, commitment, the level of engagement with employees in the stores will increase our revenue 10%. A lot or a little? That's a lot. That's 10% on $500 billion. So the head of HR went in and said, this is a business issue. HR is not about HR. If we will spend $1 billion, I think we have the potential to increase revenue $50 billion. It's a business risk. Let's try it. And she convinced him. By the way, that for me is the new HR. That's an outside-in approach. It's connecting what we do in HR to the external players that we care about, the customers. We're also finding with leadership, or with investors, either debt or equity. Are any of you in firms that are publicly traded, you have stock? Anybody have stock? A couple of you do, not very many, a couple. Any of your firms borrow money, have debt? Let me ask another question. Anyone listening? You know, the fact is, the capital markets, where we fund ourselves through equity or through debt, they care about leadership. This is the new work we're doing on leadership. It's very exciting. We go to investors and we say, when you make an investment decision to fund the firm through debt or through equity, what do you look at? 35 to 40% is the financial performance of the firm. Can they repay the money? If I loan you money, will you repay it? By the way, that's a key, because if you can't repay the money, we're not going to loan you money. 30 to 35% is what's called the intangibles. Do you have a good strategy? Do you have a good brand? Do you have a good position for your company? Are you likely to win in the future? What's 25 to 30%? Leadership. Leadership. Do you have good leadership? And the investors today outside the firm are starting to say, we're worried about leadership, Not as the same as financials. I don't want to be naive about that. You got to return the cash that you borrow or the return stock price if you have stock price. But we want leaders who will build our future. So we're going to the investment community and saying, 0 to 10, how important is leadership? What would they say? 9, 10. How well do you assess it? Well, we're not so good. How many know somebody who studied finance in their business degree? Just a pure finance person. How good are they intuitively at leadership? Probably not real good. I mean, you know, the thing they're good at is numbers and computers. Some of you are in finance and you're in HR just to learn that there's another side to the world. This has not been a good 3 days for you. But we don't know how to assess it. I'll tell 2 quick stories. We go to a private equity company. They buy firms to try to improve them and sell them. Leadership's a key piece. And they say, oh, yes, leadership is 25 to 30% of the decision to do due diligence. Leadership is critical. We've got to get good leadership. So how do you assess it? Well, wait a minute. Is that Chinese? No. You're speaking in Hindi? As Arabic? And they don't want to tell me. I said, please tell me. And they say, we're embarrassed. Okay. Here's what they said. We go to buy a company. We fix a price on the company. And then we look at the quality of leadership to see if the price is valid or not. By the way, that makes sense. Here's what we do. We hire a psychologist, and our psychologist interviews every member of the management team. And I said, that doesn't sound so stupid. Well, and I said, so what do they ask them? Who got embarrassed before? Oh. By the way, this one's going to get you even worse. If you were on the heart monitor, you're going to zoom way. Here's the question the psychologist asks every member of the management team. How well do you get along with your mother? By the way, you are not seeing the nonverbal cues. I need to move to this side of the room. You get along great with your mother. By the way, is that a great assessment of leadership? You know, that's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Whether or not you get along with your mother is going to predict that you're a good leader in this company. Now, it may have something to do with the lower levels that the professor before Alan was talking about, that physiology and emotion. But I think in HR, we have much better ways to assess leadership. Second story. One of the biggest private equity wealth funds in the world says, yes, we care about leadership. We want to find out if the CEO is good at managing change, adapting to risk, the things you've heard about it this 3 days. I said, that's great. What do? We bring him in, usually a man or a woman. We bring him or her in, and we make them feel uncomfortable for 3 hours. How do you do that? We put a little heart monitor on them, and we put them on a stage in front of 400 people. No, that's not what we do. We put him in a sailor's outfit. So we put him in a little shorts, a tank top, and a sailor's hat, and we put him on a sailboat for 3 hours to see how he responds to a new situation. Have you ever been sailing? How do you think you'd look in a little shorts, little tight shirt, little hat? I'd be embarrassed. By the way, I've got one if you'd like to try it on. No, I don't have one of those. I'd feel stupid. What was that? Mine would. He asked a question, would it fit me? I said, mine would be too large. Anyway, you know what? That's a stupid way to assess leadership. So we're putting together work. How do investors better assess leadership? That's outside in. This stuff for me is exciting. It's changing the field and feel of HR. We are not doing HR just to get our employees more engaged. We're doing HR so that our customers will be engaged. Our investors will be happier. We're not doing leadership development simply to get our leaders more authentic. We're doing leadership development so our leaders will build confidence in investors. There's a big company in Bangkok. Right now, this is real time. They have a CEO who's the founder. Big company has grown, a conglomerate, one of the big companies in Southeast Asia. Over the last 2 years, he has spent about $400 million creating a very beautiful leadership training center. And for $400 million, you can build a beautiful leadership training center. Now, as they're starting to run programs, he asked the HR, who does leadership training? How would you like to be asked this question? I've just spent $400 million on a leadership training center. I'm going to spend $100 million a year to run it. Give me the cost justification. Woo! That's pretty tough. Well, our leaders will attend training. They'll be 2% more productive. When I was asked the question, here's what I said. What's your stock price? Our stock price is $15 billion. Over the next 3 years, you're going to have put in about $600 million to this leadership training center. Because you have trained your leaders better, what should your stock price go up? 4%. 4% on 15 billion is 600 million. If your stock price goes up 4%, you're going to return the cost of that center. And the way we build leadership training programs is not to make leaders feel better about themselves, it's to feel better about themselves so that their investors feel better about the company. And in fact, I said to him, I think if you do leadership training right, you'll probably get in the range of 9 to 12% over 5 years. And this leadership training center, the ROI, the return on intangibles, is going to be a multiple of 3 or 4 to 1. By the way, that's the new HR. And I hope that just excites and scares you, because it gets us into conversations we've never been into before. That's outside in. Let me give you one other story. I said I'd tell stories. I'm advising a company, great company, in their industry, and I won't name this company for obvious reasons in a minute. They have the highest gross margin. They're at about a 38% gross margin. The industry average is about 33 or 34. So they're getting a 10 to 15% premium on cash flow efficiency. They have the highest innovation ratio, percent of products created in the last 5 years, or 4 years, I can't remember what it is. They're at about 30%, industry average is 20%. They got great innovation, they got great cost controls, and their stock is lagging the industry by 20%. For the same earnings, they're getting a 20% lower premium in the market than their biggest competitors. So they hired, I hope this is triggering you and making you a little uncomfortable, because this isn't where we've played in HR, but this is the outside-in place where we will play. They hired one of the largest investment banks in the world. I won't name the bank because it's going to be awkward what I'm going to say. I happened to be in the meeting when the investment banker came and met with their executive team. Here's what the investment banker said. You have great gross margins. They're higher than anyone in the industry. You have a great innovation ratio. You're higher than anyone in the industry. And your stock is trading for less. You have a problem. And she sat down. What would you say to her? That's why we hired you. We knew that. That's why you're here. Tell us how to fix it. And she said, I'm not really sure. How many of us in HR could quickly say, I can tell you, the investors are not valuing our quality of management and leadership the way they should. We need to help the investors begin to see and feel the leadership we've got. This company in Bangkok, in Thailand, they're going to run programs in their learning center, and in almost every program, there'll be investors in the room. They'll co-design the courses. They'll facilitate the courses. They'll come to the courses, because we want investors to see the quality of leadership that we're creating. We're not afraid of it. We're delighted with it. Saudi Aramco, if you go public, and I know that's the rumor out there somewhere, we want to get an even bigger premium, not because of our oil reserves, but our leadership reserves. That's where HR outside in is starting to play. What's the next wave? We found in our research, and I'll share it at the end today, and I'm going to share it a lot in just a minute. HR is not just about talent. It's about culture. Who said culture? HR is about building a culture. It's not about getting good people. It's getting good people to play better together. And I think the fifth wave is going to be something around how do we win through the culture that we establish in the company? Because culture will outlast people. Okay, That's the first piece I wanted to cover. I've talked about a lot of that. We focus HR outside in staffing. Somebody said, we're the employer of choice at Saudi Aramco. Let me tweak it. We're the employer of choice of employees our clients or customers would choose. I'm working in a hospital. I'm hiring nurses and physicians, actually a pediatric hospital, a hospital with children. They've now gone to parents. They're a key stakeholder. Their child is sick. What do you as a parent want to see in the nurses and administrators that would make you feel better about having your child in our hospital? Are we hiring people that meet the needs of those outside? Are we training, compensation? Everything we do inside, we can connect outside. And I talked about the stakeholders we serve. Here's a question to ask yourself rhetorically. Who are my customers? In HR, who are my customers? If your answer is only employees, it's wrong. Employee is a stakeholder. They're one. Who else? My investors of the company, the customers of the company, the communities where we operate. We believe that the customers need to represent the entire collection of people that we work with in the company. Okay. So, first question, what's the biggest challenge in my job today? Here's my lesson learned. Whatever you and the person next to you talked about, put 2 words behind it. So that. We want to improve the quality of HR people so that they deliver strategy, so that we better serve customers. And if you ask so that twice, you can turn your internal focus to an external focus. We want to build better leaders so that we can not just have leaders who are authentic, but leaders who are authentic and build value for the customer and the investor. That's my first premise. The perspective of HR should start not with HR, but with the business. Let me just stop. Comments or questions about that? Then I'll have you answer the second question. Okay, I'm going to ask. Where's the microphone? Hand it to somebody at that table. Hand it to the most handsome or attractive person at that table. Oh, that table there. Where's the heart monitor now? Oh, yeah. Congratulations. So what did you just hear in my discussion? I'm going to do a reflection test. Am I teaching well? It's not what I teach, it's what you get from what I teach. What did you just hear from my discussion? And your table can help you. What did you just hear? Thank you.
Hi. We heard about HR being not just about processes, but about looking from the outside in. So looking outside the window about what our customers want, and then being able to provide that through our strategy.
What kind of company are you in?
I'm in one of the best companies in the world.
Are you self-employed?
I work in
By the way, was that a good response? Was that a good response? I'm in the best company in the world. I'm self-employed. When I look in a mirror, I weep with Trump joy. Okay.
I work in Saudi Aramco.
Congratulations. By the way, I think 16 Saudi Aramco just said, she's going to get promoted. Why did Huda leave early? Okay. By the way, Saudi Aramco does this. And I think they do it very well. It's not what we do, it's what somebody gets from what we do. Thank you. You were very wise to give this. There's a woman up closer here. If you could bring the mic up to the woman who was on the stage. Are you going to tell us about your agency? No, you did that.
Thank you, Dave. Very great presentation, and I enjoyed.
I'm not done yet, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, my question is to you. You mentioned that finance professionals tend to have lesser leadership potential or skills. Regardless whether I agree or disagree, but in your opinion, what is the right discipline for leaders to become great leaders?
What we found, there's a lot of research. What does it take for a leader to become a great leader, a high potential to live up to their potential? One is let me answer it three ways. Number one, there is one single critical trait that the research has found. Let me tell you, how many are glad that it is not intellectual ability? Intellect is not the key predictor of leadership success. Anybody glad about that? If you don't understand the question, raise your hand. Intellect is not the predictor. What is? Emotional intelligence. No.
Family environment.
Emotional intelligence is not the predictor. The predictor, resilience, grit, learning, agility. If you had to pick one, and by the way, this varies by leader, by situation. The foundation of all of that is the capacity to learn and grow and keep moving forward. In a world of rapid change, does the person who has high potential have the capacity to expand what they know today into what they could learn tomorrow? There's a great TED Talk called Grit, G-R-I-T. Has anyone seen Grit? It's a 7-minute TED Talk by Angie Duckworth, and she shows the research. They tested school kids as well as business leaders. Children who learned and had what's called a growth mindset were the ones that had more success over time. That doesn't mean you succeed today, but you learn from the failure. Second level of analysis, we discovered there's 5 pieces of leadership DNA. So when I look at a high potential, 5 things, and you just heard them. Strategy, do they know where we're going? Execution, do they get us there? Talent management, do they work well with people today? Do they know how to engage people, communicate? Human capital development, do they make others feel better? And then personal proficiency, integrity, values, and trust. So the base principle is agility, then the 5 kind of core dimensions, and then the next piece is 30% that we found in our work is, can they do what the situation requires? Do you have some degree of bandwidth? So if the situation at Aramco requires discipline and rigor, I can do it. If the situation requires creativity, I can do that. But that's what we found.
Great, thank you.
So now I'm going to have you do question 2. What are the outcomes of good HR? Here's the metaphor. There's a business meeting. Finance people are in the meeting who are very talented and good. And they in this business meeting talk about earnings, profits, numbers. Marketing people are in the meeting. They talk about customers, net promoter scores, service scores. Operations people are in the meeting talking about inventory, supply chain. We're HR. When we come to that business meeting, what do we talk about? Person next to you, 30 seconds. What do we talk about? What are the outcomes that we in HR try to drive? What do we talk about? 30 seconds. Ten seconds. Could I just get 1 or 2 folks to share what they talked about? What did you talk about? What do we come to the meeting talking about? Let's, yeah. Leadership alignment. Competent people to do their job. Let me tell you where HR is and where I think we're going, and you guys may be ahead of this. I believe in my simplistic world, there are 3 outcomes of HR. Again, finance comes in the meeting with an income statement, a balance sheet, marketing with customer data. I think we have data about 3 things. One is talent. Do we have the right people to do the right job? Do we have the skill sets? Do we have the engagement? Do we have the commitment? Are our individual people able? I think for the last 20 years, HR has been focused on talent. There was a great book done by Ed Michaels and the McKinsey Group called The War for Talent. You bring in good people, you train them, you develop them, you do career planning, you succession planning, and the people will drive the business. We now call it human capital. But here's what we've discovered. Talent alone does not win. I'm going to give you a test. Who plays football or soccer? Who plays football or soccer? Which Gulf state has been to the World Cup? Okay, let's not go there. You're a football fan. What percent of time is the leading scorer in the World Cup? He wins the Golden Boot. Most talent in the World Cup. Wins the Golden Boot. How often is he on the team that wins the World Cup? Most of the time. By the way, that's called an analog answer, not a digital one. Most of the time. I'm in HR. I don't have numbers. Give me a number. 0 to 100. I'll give you a hint. 0. Too low. 18 is really close. It's 20%. 20% of the time, the best talent wins the championship. Individuals are champions. Teams win championships. Talent matters. Teamwork matters more. True or false? True. Would you rather have an all-star team of 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 players who are brilliant, or would you rather have average players who play brilliantly together? It's the second. You want teamwork, and the same is true in organizations. Talent matters, but culture, teamwork, the system, the workplace matters more. And then, I'll give you one other data point. This is fun, and I updated this last night. I don't know if you watch movies very often. In the Academy Awards, how often is the best actor or actress in the movie that wins Movie of the Year? 20%. The answer to everything is 20%. In fact, it just happened Sunday night. I can't remember the movie that won Movie of the Year. It was an S movie. Spotlight. Movie of the Year, but they didn't win the best actor or best actress. How often is the best director in the Movie of the Year? 70%. Didn't happen this time, but generally does. So here's the data. If I'm going to do good HR work that will create value for the customer, for the investor, as well as the employee, I sit in any business discussion and I ask 3 questions. Do we have the right talent? Great question. Do we have the right organization? Call it culture. McKinsey's big business today is organizational health. That's the culture. Do we have the right culture, the right teamwork? And I believe the intersection of those two is leadership. Your people do what your leaders do. Ooh, who's sitting next to their business leader? Who's sitting next to their business? Could somebody point at their business leader? I'm going to move back here a little bit. Who's sitting next to their business leader? Who is? Oh, where's your business leader? Super. What have you learned to do because you've observed his behavior? So what is it you're doing that this leader does that you want to get better at? Thank you.
Could you repeat the question, please? Because I'm frustrated years behind.
Okay. Well, let me do it another way. How good is he as a leader?
He's excellent, really.
Okay, that was the easy question. Now we're going to go to the next question. What makes him excellent? What does he do that you really admire as you observe him?
Yeah.
Is he your brother? You guys look alike.
Yeah, but he's not a brother, but he's a friend, but I will not compromise that. He's really up to date with HR issues and trying just to engage.
He's knowledgeable,
Yes.
he's current.
Yeah.
And so you're saying, I learn a lot by watching what this great leader does.
And I got surprised that some issues which we already applied, they are talking in this conference as a new to a lot of organizations.
What do you think his pulse rate is right now?
I think he's stable. He's stable.
It's high. It's high. Okay, now let's have fun. Could you do a public performance review of this employee? No, we won't do that. We won't do that. You know, the point is leadership affects employees. People do what their leader does. I've shared this before. From 2002 to 2005, my wife and I left our careers. We went to Montreal, Canada, and we ran a Christian mission for 3 years. I wore a suit and tie every day. I decided for 1 month as the president that I would button my coat. By the way, do any of you have a closet that shrinks your clothes? I have an incredible shrinking closet. It's happening today. So for 1 month, I buttoned my coat every day. At the end of the month, guess what? They all button their coat. Then I went for a month with my coat unbuttoned, and everybody unbuttoned their coat. And then I did a day buttoned and a day unbuttoned, just to mess with them. By the way, I was trying to teach a principle. Don't look to your leader for stupid stuff. Don't look whether they button their coat or not. That's not leadership. But every time I'd interview one of these young people who reported me, I'd say, do you have a question? And they'd look very serious. By the way, I thought it would be a great theological question. How does St. Thomas Aquinas' view of free agency differ from the Prophet Muhammad? Boy, I wanted to get into that. But here's what they said. Should I button my coat or not button my coat? I mean, I did nothing to teach them anything. People follow leaders. So here's my takeaway for you. As you leave this great conference, there's 3 things you bring to the business discussion. 1 is talent. 2 is culture. And 3 is leadership. We become the architects. We become the designers of that. We become the ones who help make that happen for our company. And as that architect, we help build that leadership and culture and capability. Talent is 3 things, and it's what you've heard at this conference. Somebody said, your comment was brilliant. It's competence. Do our people have the skills to do the job today and tomorrow? But it's also commitment, and it's also well-being. Jim briefed me coming in. I said, Jim, what are the big issues that you hear from this conference and the one you just did in London, and how often did you say well-being? 8 times. I was keeping track. I wasn't keeping track. Do our people have a sense of personal well-being? Do they feel like they're making a difference? Do they feel like what we call it contributing? Here's my HR job. Make sure that our people are competent. They have the knowledge, skills, and ability. Make sure their commitment, they're willing to work hard. And make sure they find a personal sense of well-being, a growth mindset. Culture. How critical is culture? In fact, if you had to divide across these 10 points, how would you divide them? Let me ask it this way. Think about your company today and tomorrow, and the customers we're serving, the investors who are investing in us. How many of you, for the most part, have good enough people who can serve them? Our people seem qualified. How many have good enough people? You may not have the best, but you got good enough. That's what we're finding. The war for talent isn't over. You got to get good people. But you have victory, or you win, through the culture and organization you create. In fact, if you had to divide 100 points, if I divided it, I'd probably give 5 to culture, 3 to leadership, and 2 to talent. Yes?
Culture is a very generic and overused word, right?
Yes.
So,
What do you mean by culture?
yeah, no, I think that's even will take us down another route. But my question is, from your experience and talking to various organizations all over the world, what, in your view, is an approach, a model that organizations can look at to follow? Because it's something that you can start talking about and never ends.
I don't know if you've ever done this in this region, but there's a thing. How many are from America and have done a high five? What does a high five mean? You are so smart. Yeah, there you go. By the way, that's the question I'm going to answer next. So could you give the mic to this guy and see if he gets the next one? No, don't go there. First of all, let me just say how critical culture is. We all know it. We all know it. I'm going to get in trouble for this probably. I don't know if it happens in this region, in Saudi or Dubai or Bahrain or Oman. Do any of you ever watch television shows that are not intellectually stimulating? Perhaps. There's a show in the United States. These all come from the UK. Thank you very much. And it's called Wife Swap. And I don't assume that it's shown in this region. But here's what happens. 2 families who are very different. One is strict, one is not strict. One is athletic, one is not athletic. One is academic, one is not academic. One lives in a city, one lives in a country. Just very different. The wives trade places for 2 weeks. Has anyone ever seen the show? Oh, cool. Does anyone else watch it? Cool. This is so cool. I was watching Wife Swap a few months ago, and my wife came in. And she said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm watching Wife Swap. And she said, should I be worried? And I said, no, I don't think so. Why are you watching? I said, it's research. This is my research on culture. She didn't buy that. She said, I want to watch Bachelor. Oh, what are you researching? I'm sorry. But these two wives trade places, and they have horrible conflict. Culture is an embedded set of practices, and it affects what you do. It affects how you do it. But I want to get you to think differently about culture. We just published this, or we sent it off to Harvard Business Review. They accepted it last week. When you think about culture, what do you usually think about? Our company's culture is what? What was it? Openness. That's a value. Transparent. That's another value. Our company culture is our environment. How we do things, our behaviors. By the way, you take his list, you got behavior, thinking, feeling. No, I'm a guy, I'm done. No, that says I really listen to it. Guys don't get to the feeling crap, the emotion crap. But it's that underlying stuff. I think that's a bad definition. There's three ways to look at culture: an event, a pattern, or an identity. And let me share a quick personal anecdote that gets to the third one, because I want to define culture as the identity of the firm in the mind of the customer, and then I'll give you a toolkit to help you get there. I fly a lot. Everybody has something that's a hobby. It's not a great hobby, but I fly a lot. And even when flights don't work, I can usually find a way to work around it, which happened last night. So about 12 years ago, I had 350 flights. I do about 5 or 6 a week. That's a lot of flying. I decided to keep track of every flight. So I had a spreadsheet with 330 flights on it. City from, I can't remember where I was, Washington to Dubai, takeoff, landing, how on time they were, my experience on the flight. 300-page spreadsheet, or 300-line spreadsheet, probably 10 pages. 220 or 30 of those flights were on Delta Airlines, because I live where their hub is. You live with wherever you live, Emirates Airlines or Etihad if you're in Abu Dhabi. They average 42 minutes late, 240 flights. So I sent a letter to the chairman, Mr. Anderson. Dear Mr. Anderson, I fly a lot on your airline. This was a long time ago. I've got about 8 million miles. You average 42 minutes late. Here's a 10-page spreadsheet with every flight. By the way, my wife is a psychologist. She's very good. She says I have OCD. Which is what's called organization compulsive disorder. I try to fix every organization I visit, no matter what, if they want it or not. And then I gave him advice how to fix it. Did he send me a letter back? Yes. You could write the first 2 lines. Dear Mr. Ulrich, what's the next line? Thank you for flying with us. This is the Arab culture. It's so kind. Thank you for flying with us. Next line. We're sorry we didn't serve you better. Those are good lines. The next line was, here's a coupon for 500 free miles to make up for your inconvenience. You know what? That's really stupid. I just did 250,000. The next line, see if this works for you. Here's a coupon for a free drink. First of all, when you get upgraded, drinks are free. Second, I don't happen to drink. It's not part of my theology either. I mean, he had to know that. I mean, it's like sending somebody a free drink. I mean, what a stupid thing to do. The next line, fly us again, we'll improve. That's as big a lie as the last two. I got 240 data points. You're crappy and you're going to stay crappy. You average 42 minutes late. Next line. Oh, I should also say I sent him an invoice for 4 days of consulting. I just thought that was a cool kind of, you owe me 4 days. 240 flights, 45 minutes, that's 160 hours. I work long hours, that's a day. And he said, you have a great sense of humor, thank you. And I thought, okay, somebody wrote a letter for the chairman, I got a letter back, that's cool. He called my office at the university a couple weeks later. I pick up the phone, he said, this is Mr. Anderson, is this Professor Ulrich? I said, yes, and he said, when I got your letter, I thought you were a crazy person. I thought you were schizophrenic living in your mother's basement. And I said, you've met my son. No, I didn't say that. I did not say that. I did not say that. Abu Michael, our son is finishing his PhD. That's why we're not taping this, because someday you'll meet him. He's 6'8" and he's strong, and he would have just beat me up for that. And I said, no, I'm a professor. And he said, you help companies change their culture. Would you help us? By the way, cool question. That was worth the effort. By the way, the first thing I said is, here's the fee. Would you pay for it? And I said to him, what's culture? Here's what he said. Culture are our values, our norms, our beliefs, our behaviors. Wrong. Culture is the identity of the firm in the mind of your most critical customer or stakeholder. And he said, say that again. I said, you have a problem. I'm one of your critical customers. I fly your airline 3 or 4 or 5 times a week. My image of you is negative. If you're going to change your culture, don't create a value statement. Create a value statement that starts with our promises made to our customers. So if I'm in healthcare, what do we want our patients to know this hospital for? I think downstream of Saudi Aramco, what do I want those who buy our product to know us for? Create an identity from the outside and then translate it inside. Harvard Business Review has just published 2 articles on culture. One said, culture is how people feel. Wrong. That's not a culture. That's a set of internal patterns. Culture is, do people feel the way that customers want them to feel? Because you can feel one way. Let me give an example. It's really cool for me. How many here have ever ordered anything from Amazon? Okay, there's a few who've not. Last August, the New York Times wrote a scathing rebuttal of Amazon's culture. By the way, abuse is never good, but they said Amazon is disciplined, they're hard-nosed, they're rigorous, they're tough, they're terrible to work with. Who's ordered from Amazon? How many of you who had your hands up care if Amazon employees love each other? Why did you order from Amazon? What is it you, the customer, want from Amazon? What? Commitment. When I order a book or a product, I want it to be here in 24 or 48 hours that they promise. I want Amazon to be efficient and disciplined. Do I care that they love each other? Not very much. Do I care how innovative they are? Not very much. Build Amazon's culture around discipline and efficiency. Google, on the other hand, is built on innovation and creativity. Build the culture against the customer promises. So if I were helping you think about a culture, let me give you the template. I don't have a flight, so we're going to go till about 5. And I'm going to see how your feelings, and by the way, there's a physiology issue after about 3 hours, especially for the older men, that's going to kick in. But no. Here's my template for culture change. And it's a very simple recipe. First one, what is it we want to be known for by our key customers? What is that external promise that we make? CIPD, and you are so good at this. What do you want CIPD, Peter, to be known for? What's the identity? When people look at CIPD, what do you want them to see? That's it.
We've got 4 values. So we talk about pace, so we can work at speed, agility, collaborative, and expert. And I think those are all values that our membership, our
and they stand for
expect
PACE
us-
as well.
And they stand for PACE as well, absolutely. So,
Or they stand for
the first
CAPE.
one was purposeful, I should say. Purposeful, agile, collaborative, expert. So that we tried to draw out what we think our communities that we serve in statements
Bingo.
of that nature.
Bingo. So
what
I'm
they're
an
looking
HR
for.
person in the
Yeah.
UK. I'm an HR person in Saudi.
Yeah.
Why would I work with CIPD? They're PACE.
Yeah.
I can't remember A.
Well, purposeful. So
They're
yeah,
purpose well served. Their agility.
their
Their
agility that they can bring. We can bring different thinking. We can network people. So the collaborative ideas.
collaborative
Yeah.
and excellence.
Yeah.
You know what? When you build a value set against the external promises you make to your customers, there is then value in your values. If I were doing culture, that's the first step I'd spend my time on, and I'd probably spend 40% of my time getting that clear. Then second, top down, communicate, 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 communicate. Rule of thumb is 10 to 1. Do you have kids? How old? Oh, 14 and 10. How often do you have to tell your 14-year-old to clean the room before it happens? infinity. Rule of thumb in communication is 10 to 1. You got to communicate, communicate, communicate. Bottom up. Let them tell you what it means. I want to build a culture of collaboration at CIPD. Instead of Peter saying, here's what collaboration means, go to your employees. Customers want us to be collaborative. What would that look like? That's bottom up. Side to side is processes. Change your comp system, your training system, your succession system. And in the middle, the most critical is leadership. If the leader doesn't behave consistent with the promises to customers, culture won't happen. 5 steps. What do we want to be known for? Top down, bottom up, side to side, and leadership. Does that give you? Next piece. We promised 3 things. And I'm going to go quickly through this one so I can get to the last part. Leadership is critical. Leadership shapes talent, it shapes culture, and we should answer 4 questions. 1, why does leadership matter? It's critical for a lot of reasons. What does good leadership look like? And I answered that with your question, agility and the code. How do you build leadership and how do you sustain it? I'm now going to go to my 3rd question. My first question is changing your perspective of HR so that we see not what we do, but the value we get from what we do. Second question is, what is it we bring that's uniquely valuable? Talent, leadership, and culture. Third question, how do we transform HR? And in that transformation, I'm going to talk about 2 things. One, the HR department. This one gets a lot of discussion. Do we have the right HR department? I'm going to go back up a slide. We think there's 4 steps to transformation. I've hit the first 2. Do we have the context of why we're doing it? Do we have the outcomes of what we're doing? Now we'll get into the HR design. 4 pieces of an effective HR department. 1, separate the administrative work from the strategic work. Buy an HRIS. How many of you use Oracle? How many use SAP? How many use Workday? How many are creating their own HRIS system? I'd advise you not to do that. I don't care which one you buy. Do you have a preference, Peter? Oracle, SAP? I don't care, but get one. Get one. Get rid of the administrative stuff. Number 2, make sure your HR structure matches your business structure. If your business structure is a single business, McDonald's, Starbucks, same business worldwide. Mohammed Al-Fayed, I was just with that group, so I'm no MAF. They build shopping malls. They're the same across the geography. Have the same HR system across the company. If your company is a holding company, vary your HR system. And if your company is diversified and integrated, build an internal professional services firm. That's the logic. Number 4, and this is the one I learned last year. First one, get HR systems right. 2 and 3, get your HR structure matching your business. Last, and again, let's recognize in the spirit of diversity, I don't celebrate Ramadan, and you don't celebrate Christmas, but we celebrate Christmas. And we try to get I try to get my wives. That's the wrong answer. Let's go back to wife swap. I try to get my wife a gift. Last November, she came to me in 2014, and she said, I know what I want for Christmas. How many of you have a partner where you have to get them a gift in the next 6 months? Wouldn't you like them to tell you what they want? I was so pleased. And here, she's a psychologist, a very good one. She said, I would like to spend the weekend in San Francisco in January. San Francisco is beautiful. It's one of the pretty cities in America. If you've not been there, the Golden Gate Bridge, it's on the ocean. It's like Sydney if you've been to Australia. What's the equivalent in this region? Maybe Muscat? I'm going to get in trouble there. And Bahrain, and probably not Riyadh. But anyway, it's Salalah. It is very much like Salalah, as long as you don't go over the mountains into the empty zone. So this is Salalah, and I'm so excited. We get to spend the weekend in San Francisco. And she says, oh, I ought to tell you, it's a weekend that is called a couples workshop. Couples workshop is a code name we're going to go away for the weekend, and you, my husband, are going to apologize for 48 hours for everything you've ever done. And I understand that, so I actually started practicing. Our daughter also is a psychologist. I dropped a glass and it broke at a dinner. Oh, Carrie, I'm so sorry. I just can't believe I was so incompetent. She said, Dad, what's the matter? And I said, I'm going to a couples retreat with your mom in 3 weeks, and I'm practicing. And she said, it's not going to work. By the way, I said, then what's the name of the workshop? This makes it even more exciting. It was called Hold Me Tight. Wow. So we went to this workshop. And while we were doing all this couples stuff, notice this is the guy at the thinking level, Wendy's at the emotional level. While we're doing all this couple stuff, I was thinking about HR. Now, I don't tell her that. Let me tell you what I learned. And it's the fourth point up here. And it's the point for me that's the most critical now. Families in a house. The kids aren't getting along. The 14-year-old and the 10-year-old are fighting. The mom and dad aren't getting along. The mother-in-law is horrible. I'm sorry, you're blushing. I shouldn't have said that. The family's not getting along. To get along better, they buy a new television. Is that going to help them get along better? Not at all. HR department's not working well. To get along better, buy a new HRIS system. You got Oracle, buy SAP. You know what? It's not going to help you one iota. Then the family says, oh, to get along better, let's add a new room. Let's change the structure of the house. Let's make the patio a guest room. They change the boxes on the chart, and you still don't get along. In order to get along, you got to get along. And when I sat back and started looking at research on couples, I learned some stuff. I think the key to a good HR department is not the roles we play, it's the relationships we have. And I actually don't care what your boxes look like. I don't know if anybody, who when they were first married lived poor? Nobody else? When we were first married, we had no money. We lived in a 400 square foot basement apartment. And you know what? We were as happy then as we are now. And we don't live in a 400 square foot apartment. It isn't the structure you've got. It isn't the house you live in. It's the relationships you have. So I began to listen to this literature. Oh, I should just tell you before I go through this. So I struggled this year. So what do I get my wife for Christmas? Man, I'm really struggling. I bought her another weekend retreat. She could not believe it. So we just spent, last 2 weekends ago, we spent in Seattle with John Gottman, who is probably the leading marriage researcher in the world with 400 other couples. Oops, I didn't change the slide. Let me change the slide and you'll see why it's helpful. Do we share a common purpose in our HR department? Do we have a common set of things we're focused on? I don't care if you're in a center of expertise or if you're embedded HR. Do we respect our differences? Research. 5 to 1 positive to negative. Are we 5 positive for every 1 negative? They found, and when they interviewed couples, 6 months after they were married for 40 years, couples who stayed together had a 5 to 1 positive to negative conversation. Do we govern well with each other? This was amazing to me. Couples that stayed together 60 to 65% of the time never managed the conflict. The conflict never got resolved. Let me give a personal example. I like to be on time and back a little early. My wife likes to show up just a minute or two late. Does that register for anyone else? So I used to go in the car and honk the horn. Hurry up. Good or bad idea? Really bad idea. Really bad idea. I was in finance for a long time. No, that was a bad joke. Bad idea. What I've got to do is learn to manage the differences. And I'm learning to be temperate and she's learning to be on time. And we still don't solve it. Care for each other. Am I delighted in her success? She just got a book accepted. Great book. Called Hold Me Tight. No, that's not the book. It's very close to the title, though. And I'm so thrilled because that's what she does, and I love her for that. She respects what I do. By the way, we don't do the same thing. She thinks it's crazy to fly 25 hours for an hour and a half talk, and then to fly 25 more hours. She said, why are you doing that? And I said, I don't know, I need therapy. She said, I can help you with that. She's a therapist. Do we turn to each other in a crisis? When we're frustrated and make a bid, does the other person respond at least 80% of the time? In our HR group, are we supporting each other? Are we helping each other? I'm frustrated last night. The flights are delayed. The snow is coming. I might miss it. I'm really frustrated. I don't like to do that. So I called my wife and she said, let me calm you down. Take 16 deep breaths. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Actually, that's not what she said. And are we growing? Final piece I want to talk. So what set of skills do I need as I leave this conference? There's a group of us. We've had 22 partners. We are so grateful for ASHRM. We're grateful for CIPD as partners. We have discovered there's 9 key skills for a good HR professional. By the way, this data set, and we're publishing the book soon. We have data on it. We have research on it. We have data from 4,500 HR people who did a self-report and 2,600 who filled a survey out on them. So it's 30,000 people from 22 regions in the world. It's a big data set. The key finding is in the middle. We found that there's 3 core competencies that address these questions. How do you get invited to the business discussion? Great question for an HR person. How do I get invited? Guess which one of those competencies matters most? To get me invited to the meeting. Credible activist. If your business leader doesn't know you and trust you and have a credible relationship with you, you won't be invited to discuss business issues. Go build trust. Second question. When I'm in that meeting, which stakeholders do I represent? That's an interesting question. Here's what we found. If you're going to represent the employees and them alone, be a credible activist. If you're going to be the voice of the customer, the investor, the community, you have to be a strategic positioner. Getting into the room and serving employees, it's good enough to be credible and trusted. But once you start getting connected to customers and investors, you've got to be a strategic positioner. And finally, where do I drive the most value for the business? And I think this is breathtaking and new. I got to navigate paradox. Paradox means there's tension. Should we be long-term or short-term? Yes. Should we focus on the employee or the company? Yes. Should we focus on the customer or the employee? Yes. Should we be top-down or bottom-up? Yes. Should we be fast or slow? Yes. My job is to manage the inherent tension every company goes through. And we found, I think I may have left it in. Oh, I didn't. We found that the management of paradox was the single biggest predictor of an HR competence on business performance. So, let's go through that again. Credible activist gets me in the room. Strategic positioner helps me know the business. And paradox helps me deliver real business value. That's our research. And then we found what I think is the 5th wave, and probably the coolest. I've tried to avoid giving you data. I love data. We then said, what matters more, the individual HR person or the department? It's a great question. Which has most impact on business performance? Look at column 1. When we look at business performance, the HR professional skill set explains 22% of the performance. The quality of the department explains 41%. In looking at, and then strategy and some other things explain performance. In looking at business performance, individuals count, the department and organization counts double. I think that's the next wave. You fight a war for talent. You win a war with organization. And I think the next phase of HR is learning how to create organizations, both within our departments and within our companies. And that culture issue becomes the dominant issue. And then when you're trying to serve different stakeholders, look at the incredible variance. With line managers and employees inside the company, 8-to-1, the impact of the department more than the people. With customers and investors, 3 to 6-to-1. Are we leaving this conference knowing how to be better HR professionals and knowing how to build better HR departments? And it's the latter one that we found drives the most. Okay. I'm just about done. And I've gone a long time. I apologize for that. Not terribly, because I flew 25 hours to give a talk. Perspective. Great perspective. Are we thinking outside in? Are we connecting to customers, investors, outcomes, talent, leadership, culture, transformation? Can I build a department, and can I build the people? I'm going to end in a little bit of a different place. A year ago, I was asked to be the commencement speaker at the business school where I teach, which is really unusual. Faculty almost never get to do that. And I spent a long time, what would I like to tell our graduating students? And I decided one of the things I love to do is to coach. And I wish I had time to sit with each of you. Who have I coached? By the way, I said I would not remember what you said to me. And I don't. I don't. But I do remember how I felt. Thank you. Because I felt with you something special. And now that I'm looking at you, I remember what you said. It was bad. No, I don't remember. I said, I won't remember what you said, but I will remember what I felt. So if I had the privilege of sitting with each of you, here's my 3 coaching questions. And it's the same questions I ask almost every time I coach. Number 1, what do you want? What is wanted? The most critical question we can ever answer, and probably the most difficult, is what are your priorities? What matters to you? What do you want? How do you define success? By the way, there's lots of ways to answer that. And I think unless we can answer that clearly, we don't make the trade-offs in our work life. I'll share a personal story. 5 years ago now, so it's an older story. I'm traveling to a foreign country on a Sunday, our weekend. And some of you have had the same experience I've had. Did any of your mothers grow up poor? My mother was poor. She did not have running water. She did not have hot water. She had what's called an outhouse. It's just hard for me to believe that generation anywhere in the world. But she literally had to heat the water up to take a bath once a week. She grew up very poor. And as a result of that, she taught my sister and I, do your duty. You work, you go make money. In fact, I called her because I was delayed last night. Oh, my flight's late. She said, do you need a little more money to pay for the airfare? Mom, it's going to be covered, right? By the way, it's the sweetest thing of my mom because she's still at 86, worries about, do you have enough? I mean, it just, you got to love the sweetness because there's no guile. She's as sainted as you could get. I felt like I got to call home. So I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm on my way out of town. Oh, where are you going? I'm going to this country to do some workshops on Tuesday. I'm excited to do it. And she said, oh, it's a beautiful day here. The sun's out. The birds are singing. The trees are blossoming. Your dad had a stroke. Things are great. Have a good trip. And I said, Mom, go back for a minute. What do you mean Dad had a stroke? You got a job to do. You got to go do your job. Don't let me put that burden on you. I'm sure things will be fine. Go. You know, I've thought about that first question. What do I want most? And let me be real clear, family wins every single time. How sick is he? Well, I guess he's pretty sick. They want to do an experimental treatment. Do you think we should do it? I said, let me call my client. I called the client and I said, my father's sick. And the client said, how sick? And I said, why are you asking me that? And he said, well, you made an agreement to be here. And I said, my father's really sick. I need to go home. And the client said, if you don't show up as you agreed, we will blackball you in our company and in this country. By the way, now what do you say? I hope you say what I say. And I don't swear very often. I said, you go to hell. By the way, this is not a hard trade-off because I know what I want. And I hung up and I went home and I spent 48 hours with my dad before he passed away. Leadership is about your relationship with your mother. By the way, way to take a personal story and screw it up. It is. And by the way, I have a great relationship with my mother. And I had a great relationship with Dad. And we spent a couple of hours before he went into, I would never regret that. And this company lived up to their promise. They have blackballed me. And what do I say? Thank goodness for the GCC. I get to come here and give talks. You know what? Question one, are you clear about what you want? Because work is a series of trade-offs. No regret. No regret. And you're right. My mother is the one that counts. Question two, I'll do these quickly. Who do I serve? Question one is about me. What do I want? Question two, am I giving back to somebody else? Leadership is not a private sport, it's a team sport. Because of what I do, who's going to be benefited today, this week, this month? Question three, how do I build? Am I building something that will outlast me? A culture, a system. In the report that came out this week by Deloitte on HR challenges for the next decade, it came out this week, I saw it on the flight. Number one issue, creating stronger organizations. What do I want? Who do I serve? How do I build? What a great set of questions. Thank you so much for your time. That okay?
Thank you, Dave. We're really very, very glad to have you with us today. I don't know if anyone still has any quick question for Dave, because we're quite in a hurry, but just go ahead, yeah. Can we get the mic? Yeah, I'm just...
Thank you.
So I don't know if... can I ask you a quick last question?
Yes.
I'm sure we're all going with a lot
That's
of
two.
takeaways. No, just this one. We're all going with a lot of takeaways, but what will be your final advice for young people in this region who are struggling to know what they want?
Jim, I thought your counsel to me last night, or this morning when I got in, was very helpful. I asked Jim, what do you want folks to leave with? And let me misquote you, but attribute to you. I want people to feel inspired by the careers that they have because they make a difference in the lives of others. Jim, am I close to what you said? I want people to feel inspired because we make a difference in the lives of others.
Thank you. Thank you so much.